it trines his midheaven. It's like there's nice aspects to it, but the two difficult aspects, again, the minor aspects are in on this chart, but is the square to Neptune and the square to Jupiter. The two we're going to look at in the opposition to the ascendant. But really, his sun is in Leo, needing to be proud, needing to be the best, needing to be the big kid, needing to be related to, needing to be idealized, relating to the best, being proud of his marriage and his kids. He's going to want to have those things. Okay, and he did. He got his education, he got married, he got his set up, and he began his career and his home, and everything worked. And as he wrote and as he built up his career, he got more and more attention, but he certainly had the financial support from his family and his home. So he was making money, but at the same time, he could dedicate times to writing and doing things that wasn't, if he didn't have money, he wasn't going to be inconvenienced. His wife would support him or back him up. That's that setting chart. It's beautiful. It's poetry here. But the square to his Jupiter means that there's a tendency to exaggerate and push it too far. There's struggles with understanding the trust of others and the resources of others, of how much one's getting paid. He's lucky around pulling in resources, getting grants, making money, seeing having social values. The struggle between the social values that he sees and the relationship he's maintaining, his marriage, and he's got his fixed home and family. That's an anchor that's there. But there's a struggle around what he has to teach, what he has to do, what he has to learn, that challenges just his being at home. But it's part of the fabric of his understanding psychological complexes and depths of people. It's the fabric of his understanding that he's going to share with. He's going to pull in many situations that he's going to have to express the understanding of. He's going to have to struggle with some of it. So that's the Jupiter exaggerates his sense of importance, sometimes to a vain point, sometimes to an arrogant point, but it implies there's struggles with understanding his purpose always going on, understandings and misunderstandings. So this is all on the setting side of chart. He's responding to the understandings and misunderstandings of others, trying to give it importance to find some meaningful things to fix it. It's beautiful how he's set up for it. The weakest point in this chart is this other aspect. The sun is exactly square Neptune from the second house of his personal resources versus the partner's personal resources, the 8th house. His Neptune squares his sun. Neptune, something's not as it seems. With Neptune, there's confusions, there's guilt, there's sorrows, there's a dedication, there's a messianic side of trying to prove things that happen, save things happen. So he has a need to save things or be saved or feel he's saving people. At the same time, there's a very evasive element with Neptune that if he's confronted with negative energy, I'm sure there would be clients he would try and pull away from. There'd be the matter-of-fact ones he deal with, the ones he'd get into, but sometimes they'd be getting into, when he reacted too strongly, it would start to bother him, it would start to affect him how he would be. So he has many temptations around his personal values and resources, second house, that Neptune in the second house, and the square of other people's resources, Jupiter, in the 8th house. How much do I pay? What's demanded of me? How much can I do? Where can I go? So this creates the mystical side of him. So he was doing the practical psychoanalysis with Freud and working with that, but he kept feeling there's this other evasive side. I don't exactly feel that. I believe there's something more than just the Freudian complex. I believe it can't just be that. So he had this other side of believing that there's things to astrology, that there's things to mystical sides he was seeing. So he had a part that was half gullible, half visionary, half mystical, half otherworldly, this Neptune square the sun, but it came out of sorrows and guilt. It came out of a need for compassion or for dedication. So he had a need to dedicate himself tremendously to help others, which would give him the fuel to be consistently writing and working through his teachings. Because he was the leader, he could do it, he would naturally do that. But the Neptune square sun, there were many temptations that would come his way, many things that could distract him or confuse him or challenge his moral values, both from the Jupiter and the Neptune, and the capacity to exaggerate this or magnify this. Fortunately, his moon was a very practical matter if I could deal with it, but his sun and his heart, there were confusions around it. This can be used and gone into much deeper to go into his analysis types and into in-person, but really on a simple level. Once he was married and everything set up, he got a secretary who worked with him for most of his life, who was his lover also. So he had a fixed marriage that was there in that pocket, and he had, when he wasn't being responded to properly or things weren't, he had another side to his world, of which was a hidden thing, was a confusing, was a potentially guilt-ridden thing. But it was a trade-off that he was involved in. Certainly, if anyone challenged on him, he would be sensitive of it. He probably kept those two worlds very fixed and very separate. This is work and this is home. But it's an interesting factor in Jung. This belief in himself, belief in his purpose is not really strong for him. There's temptations, there's confusion. So the need to believe, well, need to see to help others. It comes out as an act of kindness and need to help others is how it resolves in a good way. The need to dedicate it to help others. But it also, he's had confusing and complications and guilts and sorrows that would bother. And the minute they would come up, which would be there, they would plague his personal understanding. So he had a world that he lived out in that didn't suit the inner world that he was demanding for himself. There's no way he would have been tolerant to a partner's affairs or anybody else seeing someone else. There's no possible way. It was too fixed. But to be caught in that situation himself was it created a double standard. Even when he was studying with Freud, he was dedicated doing his work, being there, but at the same time, he already knew there was something else going on. There's something else going on. He was there, but he was not. He was working from his pattern day, working towards something new, from the phase of the moon, working towards the next process, which eventually he did. There were many confusions around him. Even today, in you go take psychology at university, Jungian, even though it's probably the most famous of psychological types, it's not the prominent one that's being studied in university. You're going to learn Freud, you're going to learn Adler, you're going to learn Maslow, you're going to learn different people before you even get to Jung. He's in an elite group. So there was this sort of disassociative side of him, this dreamer. So, but against the background of the need to be appreciated and loved and liked the way he's living. So this played on his fantasy. So as he got older and he got, like he would get bored out by the consistent psychological problems of one certain stereotype of people coming to him, of rich women with their problems or something coming to him and he's talking to. There's a part that he would get detached from that. So as he got older, he got more and more into the mystical things, wanted to see native rituals, native traditions, going places to experience these rituals. It was playing on the Neptune, the sun fantasies, opening things up, that he could touch these things on another level. But really they were going directly against his basic instincts of how he needed to live and how he had it. So even in the end of his life, he decided he wanted to be alone, not deal so much with the guilt or the sorrows. And he had his teachings to do and things to go on and other people to rely on. So he built a tower to work on where no one could reach him, that he could work from his tower on his ideas without having to take the input from other people on a basic level. So he, in a certain way, had his haunted side. But that haunted side, it was there, but his other parts of him was so determined to make things beautiful, to evaluate things, to help people, to make a promise, to be able to be meaningful to others, to help others. The one fueled the other. And he played a great destiny out in life. He affected the world, the consciousness in the world. Quite incredible. But even in his psychology, he had written books on the I Ching, on synchronicity, on things that were far more abstract and more metaphysical than psychological. But he was trying to bridge the gap between the metaphysical and the psychological. The psychological is basically behavioral therapies. The metaphysical is bridging on the shores of a deeper dimension. From a practical side, it looks like an escape. From the metaphysical side, it's like a gateway to a more dedicated, profound understanding. So His work took him to the shores of the temple, but there was a mystical side in him, but there was such a strong physical, material side of him. There was a struggle between these two levels in his life. Okay, that's just, I love this chart. It's just one of these very dramatic, poetical charts that has so much expression in it. So, okay, we'll look at, then we'll go from here to Mars. Now, as Mars, again, it has the minor aspects in here. So really, if you're looking at major aspects, there's no afflicted aspects to his Mars. Saturn sextiles his Mars, Jupiter sextiles his Mars, Uranus trines his Mars. Nothing opposes or squares it or conjuncts on Mars, floats fairly easily. The other stuff's there, but it's on a smaller level, so we're not going to accentuate those or talk about those at this level. We're just working on the main aspects. If there's something major in your nature, it's going to be in the major aspects. As you get deeply into things, you can see the other idiosyncrasies there. But so he has a Mars in Sagittarius in the 11th house. He wants to do, this is rising and above the rise. I want to do things with friends, for others. I want to make the team. I want to make the group. I want to prove things. So he's evaluating strongly what he gets, but he's working really hard to project his ideas, third house, to get them out and to act, to make the right moves, to establish himself, to be part of the community, be part of the group, part of the team, to establish his position in the world, to be the leader. That's the Mars climbing up towards the midheaven. But the ability to do things for groups, for a team, to start things, and the Sagittarius to push for an understanding, and to be going to different cultures and being exposed to different cultures. This is part of his experience. Mars is your desire to be experienced. Your desire to be experienced is in Sagittarius. So he was desiring the experiences of many different cultures. So even though Germanic and it had its own richness of depth and its own culture, he was fascinated with Oriental, with the I Ching, with the and in the end of his life with alchemy. And these things were all primary essence of the I Ching, of the Eastern way of Tai Chi, of the way of medicine. It's just the whole Eastern way is an alchemy. And that was, he got experiences in those ways from an early date. So even as he was studying to be the psychologist, that he'd already spent many years studying the I Ching and working with the I Ching. His whole early life was involved with that. So he would do things with other cultures, do things to prove things. His Mars is in the 11th to prove things to others, to be part of the team, part of the group. But his personal nature is really aloof. So he would get himself together to be in the right place, and then he would go and do things for the group. So he'd study with Freud, and then he would go and then finally he was being pushed to be lecturing for him and stuff. When he started to be pushed to be lecturing for him, and he went on some lecture tours with him, he eventually came out that he has his own things he wants to talk about, that he values more than what he's doing. But this Mars in Sagittarius is mutable, on a few mutable points, but doesn't have a lot of mutable things in his chart. But he'll try this, he'll try that, he'll try to go different ways, wants to try different things, is pushed to do things, and it kind of runs into, like, it's in Sag, it's a little bit explorative, a little more adventurous. It's ruled by Jupiter, trying to build nighttime increasing, night time is greater. It's trying to belong, it's wanting to belong and do things with others, part of the team. So you can see why you would want to go to see the rituals of different native tribes and different groups in Mexico and in Africa and different places to get those experiences, so we could have a foundation for understanding deeper, more metaphysical values.